briefly your background and maybe like a little intro of you and how you even got into this, and CRMs.
Oh, I actually have quite a good story prepared for this. Like, this is gonna have the practiced air of a story I've told like 100 times. So I too at one point was a filthy marketing agency person,
Mm,
uh, and as part of that work, was working on a company's website, helping improve the conversion rate at one of their landing pages. And the conversion we were going for was a form fill out. It was for a
mm,
B2B software company.
mm,
And I raised my hand and said, "So what happens with these form fill outs?" And quickly got slapped across the wrist. And they said, what are you talking about? We don't care about that. That's not within our purview. Okay, I'm dramatizing this a little bit. That is the agency I worked at said, "Hey, we're getting paid for conversions. Everything from there, who knows?" And that struck me as like a not complete picture. I thirsted to know more. Like, what happens to these people? And what I learned was every single step in the customer life cycle is a conversion, and converting into a first name, last name, email, and phone number
mm.
is only one of the first conversions that happens, but there's so many more. And if you can increase your conversion rate across any of those stages, then you can make a lot of money.
Mhm.
So that's, I mean, it's a silly story, but it is. I got obsessed with the idea of like what actually happens at all the other steps in the customer journey. What can you actually do to turn more, like squeeze more money out of these names, emails, phone numbers, info.
Mhm.
So that's where
Yeah.
I'm.
Yeah. 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 Did you, because you said you were in the like marketing agency space. Did you go down, I want to say that like the methodology of like get as many leads as possible and then just
Right.
nurture up on the back end?
Exactly. Yep. It was again. You'd go into meetings with clients, and all clients would be asking about was essentially the top of the funnel. How many leads did we increase the number of leads? And we would never have data like in e-commerce. You do right in e-commerce. You can usually say you track conversions as someone bought something, right, or
Mhm.
add to cart. But those are a little easier, and those are like a little more closely intertwined. Your top of the funnel and your bottom of the funnel are so close
Mhm.
that marketers think a little bit more about like that main conversion. But I've done a lot of e-commerce, but I've done most of my work with business to business, where like realtors that you do a lot of work with, that's a much, much longer funnel.
Mhm.
It can take years in some cases, right? Uh,
Years.
and
Mhm.
and and there's other funnels. There's referral partners. There's all sorts of types of people you work with that can increase your pipeline size.
Mhm.
And you can't just think about it as, am I getting more leads?
Now you're with, so now you started Workflow Academy. Can you tell me a
Right.
little bit about that?
Yeah, Workflow Academy. We implement Zoho as our CRM of choice. That doesn't mean I have a Zoho backpack sitting underneath me. I have Zoho pajamas. I go to their conference every year, so I'm a big Zoho guy. But I've done work with a lot of platforms. I know a lot of your people probably use things like Go High Level, free version of HubSpot.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of Pipedrive, some Zoho, some Active Campaign. Like I've seen them all. Infusionsoft, I guess it's Keep now. So we're a Zoho implementation partner. On top of that, uh, I started and sold a CRM education company. So we taught people how to do CRMs as a career.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
that's all now housed under a company called Aspireship. I
Mhm.
recommend anyone who wants to learn more about CRMs. I have an entire curriculum on Aspireship that's quite worth it, very cost effective. So yeah, I've taught this tens of thousands of people at this point. I've taught about CRMs, why they're valuable, how to use them, how to make a career out of them,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah. So interesting. So kind of like getting right into it, I want to get into like the basics of the CRM and more so like your methodology around CRMs
Yeah,
and how to like properly use one from, and I do want to say like from like because I think about like three perspectives: shareholders to know what they're looking for to make better
yes,
decisions, And that may be like shareholders, maybe even like VPs, directors. Well, in the real estate space, I want to say like, I don't even, team leaders, broker owners,
Yes.
and um, I'm trying to think of who's in charge of sales. That's team leaders, productivity coaches, and then whoever. Usually they have like an office manager as their marketing person, and they just like slap like social media marketer
Yes.
on this,
Yes.
on their title. And so like from that perspective, and then also the utility of the CRM
Yeah.
to, to accomplish business goals. What's your whole methodology around CRMs?
So I want anyone that's listening, I want you to feel a sense of FOMO, like this fear of missing out, that if you don't have a CRM, you are absolutely costing yourself money. You're costing yourself money. And I'll tell you how. If you don't have one, it is highly likely, and I see this with a lot of real estate industry people, highly likely that you have like a veritable gold mine of customers, but they're in your text messages, they're in your email inbox, they're in notes on your computer somewhere. And it's like, it's just scattered in these disparate areas, and you lose track of them, you forget about them, and all of a sudden you have no way to monetize, no way to turn them into a customer. They're just gone forever.
Mhm.
So in the real estate space, that is the kind of bare minimum utility that a CRM needs to provide, is as a bucket for you to dump all of your customers and potential customers to make sure you don't lose track of them.
Mhm.
Then you can layer on the next layer of functionality and usefulness, a task management system, a place to track all the tasks that you owe to those customers. You owe a report on the state of your local real estate market to this client that you just met with, and you don't want to forget. Normally, you store that in your reminders app, but if you put it in a CRM, guess what? You might be able to assign that to someone on your team. Someone else might be able to do that. An admin, a VA might be able to do that. So you start being able to centralize and get things out of your brain and into like a centralized spot where everyone can see it.
Mhm.
So now let's go one scale up from that. Remember, your task was to deliver a nice report to this person about the state of the real estate market in your area. What if you could push a button in your CRM and it generated a really beautiful looking version of that report with your customer's name and her husband's name and a couple properties they're looking at, and maybe they're asked about schools, and so you'll insert an extra section about schools or whatever. You push a button and it generates a proposal, and it keeps a tab. You sent this proposal on April 1st, and then it creates a task for you. Follow up on this proposal on April 3rd. And so you don't have to get all the way into like beautiful automated proposals to get value out of this.
Mhm.
You could still just live and like put some people into a contacts module and add some tasks. But the more rigor you give to adding features to this CRM, the more you have a chance to stop just like constantly being on phone calls, constantly typing out emails while you sit at red lights. Like that's
Mhm.
the dream. That's the vision. That's where you need to get.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. I want to go into like one of the problems that I see often in the real estate realm. I've seen this multiple times, Peter, where real estate agent has been doing business 15, 20 years, and they have so many leads in
Yeah.
their database. I've seen like ridiculous amount. I was speaking
Yeah.
to a guy who had over 20,000 leads in his CRM from
Yeah.
last year, just last year,
Yes.
and they're all just sitting there.
Yes.
And so like and so like what would be the first step for those individuals that have thousands of leads in their CRM to now find that gold in there? What would be like
Yes.
steps to clean it up and kind of like revitalize that CRM?
Great question. Some of you are probably tempted to just send a single mass email to all of them saying, "Hey, you looking to buy a house? Call us." Oh man, that just never goes well. It depends a lot on where you got the leads from and what info you have from them.
Mhm.
But it's all about put yourself in their shoes and what is something you can give any of these leads that's going to provide some modicum of value and trust to them right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and really, frankly, look at yourself. Ask yourself, will you get value from someone sending you a cold email asking if you want to buy a house? The answer is probably no, right? Like, people don't respond to that. What you need to start thinking about is what can you do in your area that no one else is doing, that adds value where no one else is adding it, and is in such a way that you could deliver it cold to someone, and it might be valuable. A guide to schools in the area sent as an ebook, or a link to a nice proposal that you built, an invitation to a seminar where you're like, it's office hours for real estate in the Austin, Texas area, and you're just saying, hey, I'm going to be here on this date. If you have any questions, like, I'm just here to answer. Invitation to a Slack community, invitation to a local event, come out to a carnival. Like, that's the type of stuff that I see traction from. Please, for the love of the gods of capitalism, do not send out a cold, like, looking to sell with us. Like, no one's going to reply to that.
Yeah. So you would say, like, the first step, regardless of where they came from, is just to, because I wrote down re-engagement.
Yes.
And so in the way that you're saying to re-engage with them is to figure out, like, hey, like, so, like, what do you do if you, one, like, because I see like a couple holes in this, to where I'm like, okay, one, I don't know where they came from, and I don't know
Correct.
what they inquired about, which means I don't know their intent.
Correct.
And so, yeah. And so, like, so with these emails and, getting this re-engagement, is that what you're trying to find? You're trying to find, like, oh, okay, like, where are you at? Did you buy already? Or,
Yes.
that's what you're trying to find?
And what I would tell you is, the other thing is, too many people put too much value on where's the highest number of leads or contacts, versus an exercise I tell a lot of people to do as part of an audit. Is, it's painful, but go through that spreadsheet, and you may see a lead source on some of them where you're like, oh, that was a cold list I imported from Excel. Ignore all of them. Like, if you don't have a plan for them, ignore them. But maybe 100 of them were from a trade show that you went to, and you actually established some amount of warm contact with them. Maybe you have an email from them and you remember, oh, hey, that person exists. And so you go and take a concrete, like, I'm going to call that person or send them a personal email or something. But the goal is, it's a really similar to an idea you have in financial, like in personal finances, where every dollar of your finances needs a job. If it doesn't have a job, it's just going to get, like, lost in the oblivion. Every contact you have needs a job, needs a place, needs a little hole for you to stick it into. Again, if you have 20,000 that you haven't talked to in forever, it's possible that 15,000 of them, their job is to lie in a pit with no one talking to them, or to invite them to a carnival, and 10 of them will show up, and then you can say, okay, this list is dead. I don't really have value for it. But it's possible that, like I said, you met a bunch of them at a Chamber of Commerce thing, and you have a card, and you can re-engage. You remember things about them. Like, sort them into their buckets based off of how far you got with them, and the CRM can help you organize all of that.
So, okay. So so would you just do, like, a campaign? So, like, continuing on with that, big, huge database, you would just run a campaign and constantly, like, run and run and run. How would you know that, oh, okay, like, we found something that is working to re-engage with these people? Like, what are you keeping track of in the CRM to know if what you're doing is working?
Good question. So there's a lot of signals you can keep track of, some of which are valuable, some of which aren't. And there's varying degrees of value. Bad marketers, bad CRM admins just look at email opens to an email clicks. And again, just think of your own behavior. How often do you open cold emails and, like, do something off of them? Not super often. So signals I look at a lot more, again, thinking about the real estate industry. I like to do local events. So ticket signups for local events, who actually showed up, who RSVP'd. There's things like Eventbrite or even Facebook that you can integrate events with, and that's a signal. You can track manual signals. So did someone answer the phone? You called them, did they answer the phone? You sent them a manual email instead of a big cold email newsletter blast, and they replied to that. They emailed you, they called you. Really, you guys, the trick with real estate is it's like the best real estate guy I know that executes my strategy, like executes this at scale. He's a Zoho customer, like we set him up years ago. He builds trust by making 3 videos per month about what's happening in the local area of St. George, Utah. And he posts them to his socials and he sends them out as an email newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
People have come to expect that as an email newsletter. It's content they're interested in. He does it better than anyone else. And so they actually look at it, right?
Yeah.
But that took him a while to build that trust, to sort people into these buckets of, okay, these people are interested enough to receive my videos that I send out, my like thrice monthly newsletter. And there's a lot of people who have unsubscribed from that or who aren't interested in that. And he doesn't waste time on re-engaging those people. And then of that list of people who engage somewhat with his content, again, I think way too many real estate agents think that they can just like send out blasts or post on social media versus picking up the phone, showing up to events. Like, honestly, the way you ask the question has focused this conversation way too much on the idea of 20,000
Mm-hmm.
and not nearly enough on the idea that there's 100 people in there where if you really thought about who you'd met, who you already have a warm relationship with, that just re-engaging with those 100 people like a human would with a phone call or a personalized text or something will yield a lot better results than some sort of scaled, like, you can't build a scalable system without having some traction of 100 people that you identified and found systems for how to get to them. And so it's like a lot of it's going to be just gritting your teeth at first and trying a bunch of stuff to see what sticks. But a lot of it's going to have to be personal.
That's so true. Yeah, have it be personalized because it's interesting when you talk about it from the buyer's perspective, and buyers like this could be like buyers, sellers,
Yeah.
investors, whoever it is. But from a buyer's perspective, to where I'm like, okay, put yourself in their shoes. Like if you got a cold email that was like, hey, this new house I just
Yes.
listed, like it's like that's easily I'm just putting into my spam or I'm like deleting it and unsubscribing
Yes.
from it. And so like, but if I got a personalized email that
Yes.
was like, hey, I noticed that, you know, and again, it would be a little bit tough not knowing where they came from. But if you're just guessing, like I would kind of like go broad and then go to specific
Yes.
copy. But yeah, if the personalization was like, hey, like I noticed that you were looking at a couple properties,
Yes.
and then maybe understanding one of the challenges that they deal with. Hey, you know, is it your first time buying a home? And there's no pictures, there's no links, there's no nothing in that.
Exactly.
Hey, notice that is this your first time buying? And it's just like, you know, just to get a response from them. And,
Yes.
you know, yeah. And so,
You're getting at something, anything that looks like it came from your Outlook that you sat down and wrote an email versus a really ugly like banner with your logo and like a newsletter type. People just spam all that. They're just like spam.
Yep.
Versus, I mean, you're still not going to get an incredibly high conversion rate, but something that looked like a human sent it.
Yeah, 100%. All right, cool. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, so like you basically go into that bucket to where there are, you know, with this example of, you know, thousands of leads sitting into the database, and you're looking, and you're re-engaging them, and the way that you're doing it is through value-driven content that is personalized to them.
Correct.
And that's a guessing game because you don't know where they came from, you don't know their intent, you don't know if they bought yet, you don't know where they're at in that buying journey. And so you're just going to have to, you know, trial and error your way until you start to get, you know, I would say like high engagement with the emails that are going out.
Yeah, what I'll tell you again, like we focused too much on the idea of 20,000 dead leads.
Oh,
It is there's a book that is probably valuable for people here to read called They Ask You Answer. And it's about the idea of your best marketing being, can you at scale build trust by answering questions that people have using your expertise?
Mhm.
And that's my friend, the who owns the title agency, who does the 3 monthly videos about what's going on in town. People were asking, and he is answering in the best possible way.
Mhm.
And that's, again, we don't want to focus too much on like, can you catch one of the 20,000 people who happens to be right at the moment where they're wanting to buy a property or invest in a property or whatever, and like catch them at right the moment that you can just swoop in and take 3% and think a lot more of it as, what questions do your customers have?
Mhm.
And how can you build a system that allows you to give them a personal touch in helping answer those questions and be a trusted resource at scale?
Yeah. Mm.
You meet someone at a Chamber of Commerce thing, and you say, hey, I've got a monthly guide that I publish to real estate investment in our area. Like, I'm happy to add you to it, be happy to send it to you. Like, give me your card. Being able to add that person to that list, that one person is probably more valuable than 1,000 of your cold leads.
Mhm.
But a lot of this too, why are your leads cold? They're cold because you didn't have a good system for when you paid for some pay-per-click someone, or wherever they came from, you didn't have a system to put them into,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
A lot of this goes for, what are you going to do for the next 20,000 leads that you generate?
Yep. And so where would you start there? Like, where would you say I cleaned up my CRM, or, I'm starting a new marketing campaign or whatever it is? How would I set up this CRM to, and then let's assume this org chart as well, because this is what I'm running into is like the team leaders or broker owners is starting some sort of marketing campaign, third party property website leads, or
Yes.
what a Google PPC, whatever. And they're dumping it into a CRM, and then they're telling their agents, yeah, hey, there's leads in here, go in there and work them. And so like, let's assume that org chart, where would you start for making sure that, well, one, like, is this lead source is actually profitable?
Yes.
They're actually going on really good appointments with with these things, with these with these with these
Yes.
leads. Yeah, where would you start developing that system for that type of organization?
Now, so I have a client, not in the real estate, but I want you all to take away like something from them. They sell virtual receptionist services to law firms, mortgage, like businesses all over that need a virtual receptionist.
Hmm.
Their CRM is structured such that if a new lead doesn't get a phone call within 5 minutes, it alerts the VP of sales, who then reams the salesperson who didn't do it.
Mm.
Speed to lead, speed to call, speed to reply, ability to get leads just quickly talked to rather than just like sending them an email or something. That is the name of the game. That is one way you can build trust. If someone is willing to give you their information, then you immediately need to jump. And I want to emphasize speed. This isn't like 24 hours is fine. This is like 5 minutes. Like,
Mm.
as quickly as you can get. There's so many studies that show the faster you get to someone, the sooner you, or the higher likelihood you have of eventually closing a sale.
Mm.
So does it always need to be a phone call? It doesn't have to be if you don't want to be pushy, especially if it's after hours. We have a lot of people who do like the phone call, but we also do a lot of text messaging. So triggering an automatic text message saying, hey, I saw you filled this out. Like, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm a real human. Text me back. Like, this is not an automated message. This is not an automated phone call. Like, I just want to be helpful.
Mhm.
That is one of the best ways that you can actually like see whether a given lead source is qualified. Is if you're getting back to them quickly and you're just not seeing anything from it, then you might want to check a different lead source. But you can also track that. You can track within your CRM what lead source, what campaign did they come from, and what did we actually end up closing out of that.
It's a perfect segue into, I want to say, I feel like there's an attribution problem that's going on right now, to where either one, teams aren't even keeping track of where the sources are coming from, like where the lead is coming from, which
Yes.
source is coming from. They just like dump all lead. They think all leads are the same, and they're just like, all right, cool, just everything, really don't matter where it comes from. But they're either not keeping track of it, or they are keeping track of it, but not as effectively as they could be,
Yeah.
in the sense that now that we have, I want to say, like awareness channels like social media,
Yes.
where that could be that could be a touch point for these buyers. Um, if somebody went onto social media, seen my stuff, I was putting out really good content, but then they went over to Zillow to then search for properties, as they do.
Yes.
And then now I get that lead in because I'm like a Zillow Flex partner or whatever it is. I now think, oh, wow, that lead came from Zillow.
Correct.
But when in fact, it's like, wait a minute, how do you know that they weren't on your social?
Correct.
And so, like, is there a way to set up the CRM to know exactly where these leads are coming from?
I have a delightfully low tech answer to that question. There is a very growing backlash against trying to perfectly nail attribution using like UTM parameters and like there is some value to that. There's some value to your CRM containing the something that says, hey, yes, this person did eventually fill a form out on Zillow.
Mhm.
But I'm low tech. It's a question I ask customers on my very first conversation with them. After I provided value, one of the last questions I ask is, where did you hear about us? Like,
Mm.
is there somewhere in particular you heard about us? Sometimes the answer is they don't know. And who knows? Like, I don't really care about those people. I throw them into organic inbound or don't know. I have a bucket for that sometimes. But a lot of times they'll say, yeah, I saw some of these posts. And that's how you can build a much more valuable attribution report, is to be able to see like what are people actually reporting on.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
the bare minimum you should have set up kind of from like the high tech way to think about this. Every form you have should be tracked back to a campaign and to a source. So a Zillow form should say it came from a Zillow campaign. A form on your website should say it came from your website. And if it's for a specific pay-per-click campaign, there should be some sort of UTM parameter. That is a useful piece of information. It can teach you a little bit, but nothing beats asking the client.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Would you recommend a stage? Like, I don't know if this matters, but would you recommend like a stage, like whether, like, do you prefer asking them while the real estate agent is in that listing presentation, or would you prefer after the transaction's done? Or would, like, is there like a stage of
It's a really
clients?
good question. I don't think clients mind you asking the question pretty soon after meeting them.
Mm,
Again, a lot of it assumes that you've had a fruitful conversation with them. You don't want to kick the conversation off with that,
mm, mhm,
but it takes 10 seconds to remember to ask. Most good CRMs, you can make it some sort of a mandatory field to say, hey, remember to ask this question.
mm.
Um, and again, this is like cross multiple industries. This is becoming a best practice, is take the time, ask a client, be human, right? Be a little more human.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think if people are going to walk away with this with anything, your CRM exists to give you more time to be more of a human.
Mm.
That's its purpose, especially in real estate.
Love it. It like it I want to say, like, it optimizes human connections.
Correct.
Yeah. That's a good.
It automates the like mundane and rote parts of keeping track of people, of managing tasks. There might
Mhm.
be a couple emails or things that you do automate that are more transactional, like auto sending a DocuSign or reminding them to reply to a DocuSign or whatever.
Mhm.
But it is there you should be able to pull a CRM out at any given moment, and it has a list for you of here are the 10 people that you should call.
So you mentioned reports earlier. Kind of like looking at this from a, say you had broker owner, I want to say like productivity coach. So the in the real estate world, this is the, like, I want to say like the sales manager, the
Mhm.
one that's in charge of the real estate agents, or getting the leads passed to, and then your marketing person. You had
Yes.
somebody that's running Google PPC, Facebook ad, whatever it is. Um, Collectively, like, now speaking about like RevOps, like what reports should they be pulling from the CRM
Yeah.
to then make really good decisions for business growth?
Yeah. Good question. Um, there's kind of two schools of thought. The first is this is less schools of thought and two types of dashboards you should be thinking about.
Mm.
The first is more executive level, and that's telling you across the entire team, like, what are things we see all the time? What is everyone's pipeline? So how many active deals does everyone have where things are in motion?
Mhm.
And you can usually, how big are those deals? And you can sometimes adjust to see a pipeline size by, hey, on average, 10% of deals that hit this stage end up closing. So if it's
Mhm.
$10 million deals and 10% of them close, then there's $1 million worth of pipeline here. The total number of leads, like conversion rates across each stage is really big. So
Mhm.
total number of leads started with, into how many of them became qualified prospects, into how many of those qualified prospects received a tour or went from a tour into put earnest money down, and then who put earnest money down that then closed, or whatever it is, right? So conversion rates, like we talked about at the beginning,
Mhm.
across each of your different stages that you identify. A lot of productivity managers like to track activity, meaning emails sent, phone calls made, etc. I'm I'm a little more, I don't know about that. That can get a little like not seeing the forest through the trees.
Mm.
Sometimes I do like to say, hey, it's just, if you don't have pipeline, then you ask reps, like, what are you doing? What are your activities? It can get a little cumbersome to try and track
Mhm.
how many emails they've sent, how many texts they've sent, like, and you don't want to incentivize them to just send a bunch of emails when there could be better things they're doing with their time, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
making phone calls or going to networking meetings or whatever. Um, the other kind of thing to think about, that's more executive level, looking at the entire team. The other
Mhm.
thing to think about is, how can you display metrics like that for an individual agent to be able to see their own performance against the rest of the team and have a
Mm.
leaderboard, and to be able to have good one-on-one conversations with that agent about their productivity, their goals, what's going well, what's not going well, etc.
Yeah. That is a huge, what you just said is a huge missing link in the real estate realm.
Yes.
And the reason being, I believe, Peter, is because of our pay structure. So like real estate agents, obviously, as you know, are 1099. They're not W-2
Yes.
for the most part in America. And when you're not W-2, you don't have to do anything. So I
Yes.
don't have to input stuff into the CRM. I don't have to, go to the sales calls. I don't have to go to the sales meetings or whatever it is. I don't have to do any of that stuff. And so that per agent productivity and keeping track of that productivity for the sake of like knowing who's productive and looking at the leaderboard and stuff like that,
Yeah.
to then go in there and strategize on not only training the agents to see, hey, where are these falling off? Like where is there like leakage, if you will, in
Yeah.
the pipeline? So you can then train them to then increase their conversion rates. But then just like meetings, like quarterly meetings on
Yes.
like, okay, like what are your weaknesses and what are your
Yes.
strengths? Yeah,
Yes.
I don't, it's non-existent because a brokerage, their mentality is we want as many leads. We want as many real estate agents in here as possible. The
Yes.
numbers are going to play out.
Yes.
And when you have 250 real estate agents in your firm, like it's kind of hard to have, individual meetings with every
Yeah.
single one of them to make
Yes.
sure that they're on track to hit their goals.
Yes.
It can be done, but I
Yes.
think with the current structure that's in play in the real estate realm, like it's a little difficult to like then um, allocate resources to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when it comes to pipeline, so this is how, so far, like this is how I see it in my brain. I've been asking real estate teams how they're basically keeping track of their pipeline, like basically like the pipeline stages.
Yes.
But so far, like this is what I got. So you have a new lead that's created, and then the goal is to then turn that lead into an appointment. The
Yes.
goal with that appointment is then to turn it into a contract sign. The
Yes.
goal with that contract sign is to turn it into a new escrow that's opened, and then that escrow open is then to close escrow.
Yes.
Now here's something interesting, Peter, and I would love your feedback on this. Real estate agents don't get paid until escrow closed. And so what would you define like the pipeline stages as? Like what would you track it just until like signed contract?
I consider
Or
all of that to be pipeline. In
interesting.
other industries, you call that uh, like there's an onboarding phase, which
Mm,
is not quite the same, but when you have contract, like a contract is signed, but until money is in escrow, they're a client, but they're not quite a paying client that hasn't been fully onboarded, to
mm,
use again other industry parlance.
mm-hmm,
So absolutely, like if most CRMs have a deals or opportunities module,
mm-hmm,
where these stages get tracked, and I absolutely would track closed escrow as the final point, or maybe the penultimate point. There might be other things you need to do. But like a good agent will have post-closed escrow things to do with gift baskets and sending a thank you note, and maybe 6 months later an automated follow-up to say, hey, like, how's the property? Is there anything I can help you with? So good agents think about that like on a longer term, and you might add another stage for like post implementation or post escrow.
right.
Another point I'd like to make, again, we focus too many times, especially in real estate. People I talk with, they focus too much on the 20,000 leads
Mm.
and not enough on who are the partners and customers I already have that I could do a better job with.
As we're like talking through this, you do when you every time you say that, like you're like narrowing
Mm-hmm.
my focus down to that, to where it's kind of like if I were to go into a real estate company from a marketing perspective, if I were to go into a real estate company and I seen this, I want to say like all the deficiencies that are within the company, when it comes to driving leads and that, those leads driving revenue for the company. Um, it gets me thinking that, okay, like, wait a second, let's start inside out, right?
Yes.
let's let's go to the customers that we have right
Yeah.
now. Is everything working well with them? And working well meaning like, are we sustaining relationships with them? Were they
Yeah.
happy from our services? Et
Yes.
cetera, et cetera. And so like keeping track of that within the CRM, I'm pretty sure you could like build reports for
Absolutely.
satisfaction. Yeah, within the CRM as well. And so yeah, it's interesting because I came into this like with that problem, just because I run into it often. I run
Yeah.
into it often where, you know, these team leaders and, all these broker owners, they're like, all right, cool. It's a lead game. So let's spend as
Yes.
much as possible to get as many leads in here. Let's lower that CPL as much as possible.
Yes.
And then it's just a volume game. Let's crank it out
Yes.
and then put as many leads into the database as possible. They start not understanding that, wait a second, if you're doing some sort of like Google PPC, Facebook ads, it's going to take, I read, I believe, you familiar with Boomtown?
Yes.
Yes. They put out a stat 2022 that said the average incubation rate of real estate leads is anywhere between 6 and 24 months.
Yep.
And so if you're a team leader or broker owner who's spending money on these leads and it's month 4 and nothing's turned into revenue yet,
Yes.
now all you have is just a big, and you stop. Now all you have is just a big database full of, however many leads that were coming in during that time.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so instead of starting with the thousands, go to the 100 clients that we helped this year. Make sure everything's set up properly with them and, sustaining relationships with them, and then go to the next stage. All right, cool. Who's in escrow right now?
Yes.
Let's set up, everything that needs to be set up. And then you just work your way out to like now, okay, now that we fixed everything, now
Yes.
let's consider new campaign, marketing campaigns to
Yes.
drive more high quality leads into the database.
I want to really call out real estate, especially, is an industry that suffers from just a ridiculous amount of charlatans who sell one house a year and it's their cousin's house that they guilted into letting them sell for a 3% commission.
Mm-hmm.
There is, in my experience, very few brokerages are actually doing what we're talking about well
Mm.
and investing in like the technical infrastructure and training and focus to be able to make this work. There's a lot of money to be made for the brokerage that figures this out. This is a unique value proposition for the brokerage or team that actually makes this happen. Too often I get team leaders who pull up to a meeting in one of those Mercedes-Benz box cars, the ones that are like $120,000. And they're like, all right, tech nerds, like, tell me what I need to do to scale my team's leads and conversion by 20. And it's like, no, you can't just pay this lip service. Like, you can't just think about this one day. Like, if you need to put the hard work into figuring this out. And if you do, your customers will notice that, and your partners and referral sources and everyone will notice that you are the brokerage or you are the team that has their shit together, where others are just scrambling.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know why when you were talking about that, I had a visual of a water hose with a lot of holes in it.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And yeah, and the normal mentality, like the normal mentality in the industry is like, well, let's just pump more water into it.
Exactly.
And so instead of taping up the holes or getting a whole new water hose.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's interesting. I love that though. Yeah, it's kind of like the quality over quantity
Correct.
conversation. Yeah. Interesting. You were kind of like segueing right into of like one of the last two questions that I have, which is like some of the biggest CRM challenges that you've seen over your career. That, and this could be like companies in general, because I feel like I'll know how to make it relate to real estate. But if it's not something real estate, what are some like of the big like CRM challenges that are costing companies lots of time and maybe money?
Yeah, the biggest challenge, I will focus it on real estate because it applies to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Your biggest challenge by far is when you have a CRM that doesn't actually make your agents happy or feel like they're being more productive. You need to, I teach a lot of classes to CRM implementers. I tell them all the time, you are like the dust of the earth compared to the glorious salesperson. The salesperson is who we worship. They are who actually like makes the gears turn. And if they don't like or don't have like receive value from the tool that you're building, sorry, like there's no value. You're not providing value.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that's when I say, when you pull up to a meeting with a CRM expert and think that it's just going to be 30 minutes of turn the crank, find exactly like find it, go high level, turn it on, you're done. It's not. Like there's training, there's implementation, there's hard questions that need to be answered. It's going to take work, but if you can do it right, then your reps will worship you because you've built, like, honestly, it's kind of the point of so many team leaders in real estate think of themselves just as like they're a team lead just because they get leads, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that is their values, that they provide leads. But it's like you can attract more and better agents and get more commissions and get them to close more if you not only provide more and better leads, but if you provide a really good system by which agents can easily and happily convert them at a higher rate than they could with any other team leader.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that requires work. That requires thinking.
Yep.
Yeah. You can't just turn on go high level.
Definitely agree. Peter, what I like to do is I always like to end the podcasts that I have with asking you if there's any sort of challenges that you're dealing with at the stage that you're building in, if there's any challenges that you're specifically dealing with, because I may run into another CRM guy or whoever it is that may have some answers to it, and vice versa. And so is there anything that you're dealing with right now that's maybe a challenge, a problem, that if you were to fix, it would have a really big impact on your career or your business?
Yeah, good question. For me, I am still looking for, like, my ideal customer is already using Zoho. They're scaling. They're usually doing over about 3 million in revenue, and they want to get to like 20, 30, 40, 50.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the biggest key. They recognize that if they can nail a CRM right, that they'll make oodles and oodles and oodles of money.
Mm-hmm.
So that is when you think the word Zoho, when you hear the word Zoho, if that ever comes up, just think, hey, maybe they could go talk to Peter. That's the biggest impediment to my growth, is just finding those correct customers.
Right. Is there anything you want to plug, Peter? Is there anything going on in your life? Anything that you want to, put out there?
Zoho CRM is not bad.
Yeah.
It's most useful if you're a bigger brokerage. Like if you're just a one-off team lead, like you have a few agents, it's probably not valuable to invest in a more like robust CRM like that. But if you're a big brokerage, we have companies doing 10, 20, 30 million on Zoho with really, really, really slick tool that makes their salespeople a lot of money.
Well, Peter, I appreciate it, and I take pride in
You're the
in
first
what you
one
said.
to got you, Cameron.
Yeah, what you said the first time, where I'm the first cold
Really?
LinkedIn outreach. Yeah. But I appreciate you, Peter.
Thanks, Cameron. It was great meeting you, dude.